Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a jelly roll, and this is what it looks like. This is a sponge cake, a very thin sponge cake that's wrapped around a filling. Today our filling is going to be whipped cream flavored with raspberry jam. So to start, we need to preheat our oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 200 degrees Celsius, and you will need a baking pan. This is actually called a jelly roll pan, and it's a pan that measures 15 by 10 inches, which is 38 by 25 centimeters. And then to prepare our pan, you first need to either butter, or I just sprayed it with one of those non-stick sprays, and then you need a piece of parchment paper and just fit that in there. The reason we put the either a spray or a butter is so that parchment paper will really stick to the bottom of our pan. And then just fit it in. And then we're going to butter and flour our pan. Or you could spray with one of those baking sprays that you can buy now that actually have the flour in them. But we'll do it the old-fashioned way today. And I've just got a little melted butter, and I'm using a pastry brush to just brush that. And the reason we prepare it this way is so that once our sponge cake is baked, we can easily remove the parchment paper from the cake. So it's very important to prepare your pan properly here. So once I've done that, then I'm going to take a little bit of flour. Let's put it over there. And then I normally do this over the sink. So just kind of tilt your pan to get it all the way around. And then this is the part I normally do over the sink. It's going to be a little noisy. Just tap it, and there's our pan. Okay. So now for our batter. If you're using an electric stand mixer like I am here, use your paddle attachment, or you could use a hand mixer for this. You will need to start. You will need, as I said, we're making a sponge cake, very easy, just basic everyday ingredients. The first thing you need is 4 large eggs, and have your eggs at room temperature because they will beat, to their full volume when they're at room temperature. Cold eggs, not so much. And then you will, of course, we need some sugar. You need 2/3 of a cup, which is 135 grams of granulated white sugar. And then I like to flavor my sponge cake with 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract. And I'm just going to put that in there. Now, if you don't want to use, if you don't want to flavor it with vanilla, you can just leave it out. Or you could add another type of extract, like a lemon or an almond, something like that. And what I'm going to do now is beat this on high speed until it's really thick. I mean, really thick and fluffy, and it'd be really a pale yellow in color. Now, depending on your mixer, that can take 5 up to 10 minutes. So you will have to run the mixer for a while. Okay, that's done. As you can see, really thick, fluffy. And when you kind of lift your beater, it kind of falls down slowly and then dissolves back into the batter. See? Beautiful. Okay, so that's that. So in a separate bowl here, I have 3/4 of a cup, which is 90 grams of cake flour. Cake flour is a low gluten flour that gives cakes a really nice soft and tender crumb. And to that, I'm going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon, 3 grams of baking powder. We're going to give that sponge cake a little bit of a lift. And just 1/4 of a teaspoon, 1 gram of salt. And then you can either sift it, or I'm just whisking it together. So that's flour. So now what we're going to do, I'm just going to transfer, because my bowl is I want a wider bowl. And then you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to sift the flour over the top of the batter and fold it in. And I do find if your bowl is wider, it makes it a little easier to do. So now I have my flour, and then you want to sift your flour over. So you can either use actually a sifter, or I'm just using what I have in the house, just a fine mesh strainer. So what I'm going to do is you want to add the flour not all at once, because then you have to fold too much. And I'm going to do it, I think, in 3 additions. You can do 2, but I'm going to do 3. And then just sift it over. So what that does is it sifts our flour at the same time as, makes it easier. Now, I'm just using my spatula, and you want big strokes and fold up and over. Because we want to mix it all in, but at the same time you don't want to like over mix and deflate the batter too much. So that's why we do it we don't add all the flour at once. So just big strokes. Make sure you get around the side and at the bottom. Once you do that, add a little more. A little bit of a technique, but not too bad. As you can see, very few ingredients needed for a sponge, just your basic sponge cake. Okay, a little flour on the bottom there. Release that. Gonna really go through it, because sometimes you'll have like pockets of the flour. That looks pretty good. So just real big strokes. Okay, so we have our pan. Pour that in there. Oh, it's just such a beautiful batter. Okay. My hands here. And then you could use the back of a spoon, or I'm just going to use an offset spatula. Just spread it. Make sure you get in the corners. Try to do an even layer, or as even as you can do it. Looks good. I find if you just run it right like that, you can kind of get it pretty even. And then for baking, I find we have our oven at a pretty hot temperature, so it's like really quick, and it's so, because it's so thin. I find around 10 minutes. What you're looking for, of course, everybody's oven is a little different, but what you're looking for is, it'll be a really nice golden brown. And then if you take your finger and just put it in the center, it just kind of bounces back. Or you can also, the toothpick test, put it in, it should come out clean. I'm just going to give this just a little tap in case there's any air bubbles, and then just give it a little shake. So about 10 minutes. Okay, our sponge cake is now done. Look gorgeous, it's beautiful golden brown. You press it, it'll kind of springs back, and like I said, toothpick in the center will come out clean. So the thing is now, we want to take it out of the pan and actually roll it up into the shape that we want at the end. And that way it helps to prevent, I mean, it's not perfect all the time, but it helps to prevent the sponge from cracking. So what you want to do, because we're going to lay a cloth, I'm just going to sprinkle dust, I guess you could say, some powdered sugar. You may know that as confectioner sugar, icing sugar, just a little. So this way it won't stick to the cloth. So just do that. Looks good. And then take a clean, always clean, dish towel. So I put that like that, and then I'm taking my rack, see if we can do this and flip it. Okay. And I'm going to use my gloves because that pan's still pretty hot. See if I can get this. Hard to work with gloves. Okay. As you can see, that's why we grease the pan before we put the paper, so everything just comes apart. So now, hopefully, I'm just going to peel, because we did grease and flour that paper. Let's peel that like so. Oh, there we go. And again, I like to put a nice, another sprinkling, just so when I roll it, it doesn't stick to the cloth. You don't want, when you unroll it, to have most of your cake on the cloth. Okay. Now, which way do you want to roll it? I like the long way, so I'm going to take my cloth and just, you don't have to do it too tight. Just roll it like so. And there we have it. So now I'm just going to let it cool like that. And when we come back, we will make our filling. So now we're going to make our filling. Jelly rolls were actually invented back in the 1800s, and when they were first made, they were in fact just filled with a jelly or a jam or a preserve. But now, as all of the recipes evolve, we can use so many different things. So I'm going to keep to the original and use a raspberry jam, or you could use a jelly. But I'm going to also put the jam in some whipped cream, which I think makes a really good combination. So I'm just going to do this by hand. I have a metal bowl, and I'm going to start with a half a cup, 120 milliliters of cold whipping cream, or heavy cream is a heavy whipping cream. That's cream with a 35 to 40% butterfat content, which really means when I whip it, it will reach stiff peaks. So if you want, you could add a little sugar. You don't have to. I'm just adding, maybe 10 grams, about a tablespoon, somewhere like that. And I'm just using a wire whisk. You could do this in your stand mixer with the whisk attachment, or you could use a hand mixer. I'm just going to get a little bit of a workout and do it by hand. Okay, so that's about right. I've kind of got like just soft, not like really stiff peaks. So I'm going to add my jam. Like, you can use any type of jelly, jam, or preserve. I'm actually using a raspberry jam. It is homemade. There is a recipe along with the video on the site if you want to do that. And I have seeds in mine. You could strain it and remove the seeds. So the amount is really up to you, how strong a flavor you want of your jam. I'm using, for this amount of cream, I like a fairly strong flavored, so I'm adding about a quarter of a cup, which is about 60 milliliters of raspberry jam. And then I'm just going to continue to beat this until it gets nice and stiff. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's nice and stiff. Okay, so now we are going to assemble our jelly roll. And if you may not know it as a jelly roll. You may know it as a Swiss roll, a cake roll, or even a roulade. So depending on where you live, it goes by different names. But it's all the same thing, sponge cake filled with a filling. So just unroll your, and just I'll move that, take it off. You can leave it on the cloth. And then we're just going to spread it with our filling. Now I tend to, you want to leave a bit of a border because when you roll it up, you don't want it to kind of squish out the sides and the ends and all that. So if you remember, try to leave a bit of a border there. Sometimes you forget, but then you can just scrape that off and cook's treat. So now, I'm using back of a spoon. I'm using my offset spatula again. Spread it. Isn't that gorgeous? Now, I like the seeds in the raspberry jam because I think it looks kind of cool. But some people say it gets caught in their teeth. So you can just use a small strainer and strain it out. Or use another type of jam or jelly, preserve. So many choices these days. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to see which is my, I have a little bit of cracking, so I'm going to roll that side so it doesn't show. And there we have our jelly roll. Oh, you miss her? Doesn't that look nice? And you're done. You can see. So you can, if you want, dust. You know, I don't think it needs anything on the top. I mean, you could take some, whipped cream and do little dots or something. But I don't know. I think this is kind of like a more casual dessert. Or the kids come in and just, cut a slice after school. I don't like to make it too fancy. I think it looks great just like that. If you serve it right away, the cake will be, fairly firm, and then you have the separation of the cake and the filling. If you store this, like especially overnight, you will notice that the cream starts to get into the cake. It softens the cake a little. I don't know. I like it both ways. So I'm using a serrated knife to cut, kind of a sawing motion. And then what I do, if you're going to cut more than one slice, I just take like a paper towel or something and wipe my knife so you get a clean cut. And there we have it. I just think it's just such a great cake. Man, let's try some. Oh, look at that. As the name implies, sponge cake. Kind of spongy, but soft. It's sweet, but not too sweet. And then, of course, the filling. I love whipped cream and I love raspberry, so that combination really works for me. So try this. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.